really pleased this morning. I've been joined by Simon Lloyd. Simon, thank you very much for giving up your time this morning.
Pleasure. Lovely to be here.
So Simon and I know each other well, but for the purpose of people listening who may not be familiar with your background, so Simon's Chief Marketing and Customer Officer, an incredible background with both FTSE and big private equity companies, but some of the brands where you've been before, so Ardmore Bank, AXA, BBC, Nokia and Virgin Atlantic, to name five. So there's some really kind of big blue chip brands. And I don't know where you find the time to do everything at the moment, but I know you hosted Madfest up north very recently, which I attended, which was absolutely fantastic. Great quality of speakers, thoroughly enjoyed that, and I'm looking forward to the one in London. And you've had a couple of awards as well. So Marketing Week's top 100 most effective marketeers and Campaign's Power 100. So all pretty exciting in your world by the sounds of things. So thank you, really appreciate it. Are you happy for me just to dive in with some questions?
Yes, dive in, and thank you for the nice intro.
Oh, absolute pleasure, and you know, and much deserved. So I obviously know about your kind of career journey to date, but would you mind just giving a bit of a kind of potted history as to kind of how did you get to the level that you're at now, and you know, what were some of the standout moments along the way?
Yes, so thank you. Obviously, you mentioned some of the brands that I've worked with. I feel very privileged and lucky in my career to have done some very exciting things. I mean, interestingly, my marketing journey, I actually started off in my career in sales, which I think has always been a great foundation for good marketing, is understanding ultimately how to sell. I mean, marketing in many ways is seen as the support function to what sales are doing, but it's also around really helping and understand who those customers are that you need to sell to. So having that grounding, I think, has always left me in good stead. So I started off in FMCG, very classic training, and I still say to this day, even though we're going back quite a long time, you know, FMCG, you know, the CPG brands, they really do understand that whole 360 of customer and how to manage product all the way through its life cycle and customer lifetime value. And that's always stayed with me. Fantastic training. You mentioned Nokia. I was at Nokia for a long time in the heady days, in the 2000s, all the way up until the iPhone launched, which is obviously a seismic shift then in the mobile industry. Nokia didn't quite, well, they did see the iPhone coming, but didn't want to believe that the iPhone was going to take the world by storm. So, fantastic time I had at Nokia. To be the marketing director of that brand at the time, which is the world's largest brand by market cap, was a fantastic experience, and the UK market was so important for that, and did lots of pioneering things in the day. We were one of the first to do a big media sponsorship with ITV around the X Factor, which really then linked through to how we would sell mobile phones, and it was ridiculous numbers at the time. We did a handset which had ringtones on it. Remember those things? Little ringtones. Simon Cowell. And we made over 100 million in revenue off the back of programs like the X Factor. So it was just an amazing time really to be in a brand like that. But that really put me instead working at the forefront of a technology-based brand. Some of the things that I then continue to do in my career. You also mentioned the BBC. I worked on the launch of iPlayer. Groundbreaking technology for the UK video on demand industry. It really kind of set the standard. So that was very exciting times, and it was also at the time when BBC was reviewing all of its online approach. Obviously the BBC website, I mean, at the time it was like the world's 5th most visited website, so it was just amazing to be working on these kind of big scale digital media products. And I then made a big transition up to Salford, and I got to work on all sorts of exciting things. And one of the latter things I did at the BBC is I worked on the London 2012 Olympic campaign and led a lot of that. So that was amazing times. And then I went to Virgin Atlantic, which was, you mentioned a standout moment. Such a fantastic brand. It still is today. And I thoroughly enjoyed my time there, working in a brand which had such amazing kind of preference and consideration in the market. Everyone knew who it was. It was very famous for its advertising. And I know those are times gone by, and it's probably not fashionable for the type of advertising that it did, but to work in a brand that was always constantly disrupting, and in an organization which was ultimately brand led in the ethos of Richard Branson, to be the lead marketeer, caretaking that legacy. Really, I felt very privileged to be part of that. But it was also at the time when online was and online direct sales was really coming into the marketplace. EasyJet had launched direct to consumer brand through online. BA was doing things. So there's also a real strong business challenge there as well. And how do we convert all that lovely brand affinity that Virgin had into direct sales? So it was an amazing role to be involved with. And then really my last 8 years or so, my career has been moving into financial services. You mentioned AXA. And financial services have been really interesting because there's a lot of transformation happening. There's still a lot to be done even today around really moving to single customer view, really understanding how data can really drive value in the organization and change. And I really enjoy doing change and transformation, and that's why I've enjoyed working in financial services. I've also done a fintech where I supported the founders do over 100 million raise. So that was really interesting. So that was, a different departure in terms of actually how you're working with big investors to convince the marketing customer story that think something's going to work. So I really enjoyed that. And then latterly, Aldermore Bank, one of the original challengers, knocking on the door of some of the tier one banks. And again, that was around customer marketing transformation and really putting marketing into a position that was fit to drive the challenges that it has for the future, again around customer and data, as well as working on the brand side of things. So I've had a great career to date. I'm currently doing a few different things, helping other startups, using my knowledge and experience to grow and scale other businesses that are very early on in their journey.
Oh, exciting times. And you mentioned within that about change and transformation, you've done a lot of roles that have been involved with that. And I know brand strategy is one of your kind of core strengths. How would you go about kind of developing a strategy or implementing a strategy where you've got significant change and transformation? Have you got any tips or guidance for anyone who's kind of embarking on a similar thing at the moment?
Yeah, I think anyone who's working in putting a strategy together would understand the core elements. It has to start with really good customer insight, and I think where you really want to drive that success or put yourself in a good position for success is you have to understand what those business needs are, the customer needs are, and any role of any marketing strategy should be the bridge that join those together. If you're too much one way around looking at a customer brand strategy and you haven't really engaged, I want to say engaged, I mean really curated together with the business of what that is, you're setting yourself up for potential failure. So it's so important that when you develop, very customer-led strategy like that, that you are flexible enough to ensure that it's going to deliver what those business needs are. And that's something easy to say, which as I say, most people probably listening to this would go, well, of course we would do that, but it's very, very difficult to execute against. And that's where it comes to, if you think you're stakeholder managing, you think you're involving people in the process, you need to overdo that really and ensure that people along the way, and you very much want it to be that people think that it's their strategy. That's when successful strategy really lands in an organization, is when people feel like, I own that, I did that, and I'm talking about other people in the organization. Marketing's job is to curate that whole process through and ensure that the strategy executes to its best of its capability. But marketing shouldn't be the one that's fighting it from the top and not bringing people with them. the whole kind of we will build it and they will come scenario. It has to be we built this together and we arrived at the destination together. So that's my approach to building strategy is, take that time to really engage, involve people that you work with in the business to come on the journey with you.
Get their buy-in, basically,
Get the buy-in
into
yes.
the process. I wanted to talk about priority for senior marketeers at the moment, but as we were chatting before we, started recording this, I think actually the bit that's really interesting to talk about is kind of marketing's role on the board. We're seeing a lot of change at the moment in terms of marketing now being talked about as the engine for growth. But I just wondered what your personal view is on kind of marketing's role within the board and the business, and the things that we can do to really help positively influence that.
Yeah, no, really good question. And I think it's very topical at the moment. Obviously, within your position, you've seen the market fluctuations and, I think we are coming through to the other side where marketing has had a bit of a hit over the recent years. And I think a lot of that relates to marketing is always under the challenge for being seen as a cost center rather than a value driver. And I've seen this happen a few times. We're going through the AI transformation now, and I think a lot of, particularly CFOs and those that are managing the cost in the business, will immediately look at we can do things that marketing do cheaper than necessarily employing large marketing teams or strategic leaders as CMOs. So it's been, it's really imperative that CMOs really understand the core financials of that business and really kind of go beyond reporting on metrics around voice of customer or brand or performance marketing metrics, and really kind of speak the language of the business and CFOs to keep marketing within the business, really, so that you're always earning that right and seat at the table. It's the job of the CMO to ensure the marketing organization is successful, and that is, and I'll repeat what I just said, marketing. You can't underplay that. And I think that, over recent times, marketing was probably not done a great job at that. The rise of performance marketing, I mentioned that a moment ago. The fact that it's called performance marketing suggests that other marketing doesn't perform. But then it's too easy for people to, other execs around the business to look at, well, if you can't measure what you're doing, therefore there's no value being driven. So while that's been hugely successful and you can attribute, that whole world is changing. Everything's moving much more to all about first party data. You mentioned growth. There's a real opportunity now for marketing to go, look, actually, we do need to start really driving long-term customer value for our own data. We can't just rely on following people around the web through Google and rely on PPC and things like that. We've really got to start to go back to what marketing has always been about. Really understand our customer, join that up with what the business strategic needs are, and start building those long-term life value relationships. So that's why I think the shift is going to go back towards actually it is marketing that can be part of driving that growth. But we need to embrace it, and we need to lead with authority, and always lead with a customer first mentality.
And we're seeing that reflected in the kind of job briefs and the structures. So if you look at B2B, where you would typically have a CMO and a CRO, we're actually starting to see, and it is the very beginnings of that shift, where actually the CMO will be the kind of dominant player of those two roles, and that revenue may report through to the CMO role. And that would never have happened previously. It would always be reporting through to CRO. So I think that's quite interesting that B2B and particularly private equity are looking at marketing now as kind of that engine for lead generation, demand gen, brand strategy, content, to kind of create that consistent pipeline. So I think we'll see some C-suite structural changes on B2B. And then B2C, again, it'll be more of a combined thing in terms of marketing, depending on the nature of the business, with kind of e-com and digital. So marketeers, senior marketeers are going to need to be 100%, I'm with you on that, kind of financially savvy and speaking the language of the CFO, but they're going to need to have really, really good technical literacy and be strong on that digital marketing. And if it's a retail environment, kind of e-com as well. I think that's we're going to see broader responsibilities within these roles.
Yeah, and I completely agree. And I think it's an interesting point you make about private equity, of looking towards, well-rounded breadth
Yeah.
marketeers to own and drive that. Because part of the problem that's happened is the senior marketing roles been diluted. So you ended up in organizations where you may have CMO, a CRO, a COO, lots of C's all owning what traditionally would have been one role, driving all of that. So there may be something in PE firms starting to recognize, actually, for efficiency, we don't need lots of people all trying to identify the same problem. They look to senior marketeers who, good marketeers should have all of the above in their locker. They should be around strategic insight customer. They should be all about product development. They should be all about growth and revenue, and they should all about retention and loyalty. That's, that for me is a true CMO type DNA. And if that's being recognized, and there are plenty of really good marketers out in the market that can do that, that's a good thing. And I hope that is a trend that continues, because that will help, as back to the original question, put marketing back at the top table in discussions, as a true partner to CEO, CFO, and the rest of the C-suite.
Agreed, and interesting. We're about to move on to kind of the advice section of our Q&A. And one thing that I would certainly be advising people who are looking at those senior leadership roles, as you're kind of coming through at head of level, is based on exactly what you just said, Simon, which is kind of spend time understanding what the CFO's office is looking for from marketing. Spend some time really understanding the commercial elements of the business, and 100% upskilling in terms of digital AI. That will absolutely be expected going forward. What other guidance would you share with anyone who's at that head of level, looking at CMOs, chief customer officers like yourself, going, how do I get from here up to that level? What do I need to do?
So obviously you mentioned the technical expertise and being proficient in areas outside of your core. So you mentioned the really understanding the commercial financials of the business. But I think the other important thing is the soft skills. It's the whole walk the halls idea. You need to really work hard to build those trusted relationships, because I've always felt at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what business you're in, we're all human beings, and the one thing that I've always seen and believed in is that people buy people. If you're head of marketing moving up to the C-suite, your technical expertise should be pretty good. Yes, you can fill the gaps. You may be a bit more brand led than you are digital led, where you can fill that. That should be the easier thing to do. And the harder thing to do, particularly if you're not a natural person who likes to put real time and effort into building those relationships, is really try and do that, because you need to have people on your side. It's all about, a good friend of mine, Pete Markey, says this a lot. He always talks about what is it that people say about you when you're not in the room. And that's so important as you build up to C-suite level. In the past, I've, not concentrated on that. If I think back sometimes early in my career, I'd always thinking, well, we're marketing, we're driving all of this activity, but other people in the business won't necessarily attribute that to marketing. And it's only through building the relationships, and so that when you are expecting people to support you, you've built that. And that just takes time. and effort, a lot of listening. And that would be the other advice that I would give as well. It's very easy as a marketeer. We like to talk about what we're doing and all the rest. We're a natural show people a lot of the time, and take the time to really listen and understand. I've found in my career, particularly CEOs will like to talk. Just listen, and don't always be too eager to tell. Sounds like basics, but it's so important. And I would say it's as high as 70%. I'm just doing it from my own insight here. 70-80% of your success once you get to C-suite level is the way you operate and navigate the relationships, as opposed to actually the technical side of what you do. Spend your time on that.
Great guidance. So we always finish with a question about mindset. I'm a big believer in positive and growth mindset. I know you are too. And do you have any kind of tips to share as to how you maintain that positive growth mindset that would help other people?
Yeah, look, growth. I mean, ultimately it comes back to the business challenge. Marketing has to be seen as the growth engine. I think you used that expression earlier on. And it's always thinking, marketing should always be thinking about the future, helping, understand what those business challenges are, and, get ahead of where the opportunities are. We're the ones that should spot the gaps, be looking into the future, into the market, thinking about our brand and how we can shift that into new areas. And that creates this element of growth. We're always looking forward. Yes, look backwards, take your lessons learned, understand how you nudge the dial in retention on customers, but always really kind of bring back to take the time. And it's too easy to get locked into running acquisition and just feeding the funnel. But try and think about how you carve out the time to look at what those opportunities are, and there's no shortcuts to that. That's really understanding your customer, who your future customers are, and the market. And if you start to talk in that language when you're having those conversations and listening to the CEOs and other senior leaders, you'll naturally create the pull to business leaders who go, well, we need to talk to the marketing team because they're going to help us figure out how do we grow into a segment, how do we compete with our competitors. And that's the same whether you're going B2C, B2B, B2B2C, be the experts in the room of what the market and customer dynamics are, and make sure you find the best way of telling that story through the organization in partnership with them. And that will naturally stimulate growth, and you'll be seen as the growth engine.
Excellent. Simon, thank you ever so much.
Thank you.
Absolute pleasure to catch up with you, and really appreciate your time.
No, brilliant. Thank you very much, Suzie.
Pleasure.